Monterey, where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago, where have all the flowers gone? Gone to young girls, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Long time ago, where have all the flowers gone? When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Welcome. Thank you so much, friends, for being here tonight to support activism and change in Monterey County. I'm Karen Arabo. It's a pleasure to welcome you here to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Monterey Peninsula. The Social Justice Committee is one of the co-sponsors of this event. I'd like to give a shout out to our chair back there, serving on bartender duty, Ms. McCarthy. Another sponsor, our wonderful brothers and sisters of the Hotel Workers Unite Here 483. We have the President and Secretary in the room, Senator Bill Monning. Senator Bill, stand up, please. And Hector, stand up, please. They are, if you are looking to support any union and walk the line, I recommend being with these brothers and sisters because they walk the talk. That is one of the best unions in the area. Yeah. And also we have the People's Oral History Project is another co-sponsor of this. And Juan Martinez, right on cue, walked in, stand up and take a bow, being a co-sponsor of this. And also, this was the brainchild of the Progressive Democrats of America, Monterey Bay chapter. I would like Gary Carnes, their chair, to please stand up. If you have not done so already, we invite you to give us your information at the front desk there. We would love to let you know what's going on. Progressive Democrats are happy to add you to the list and let you know all the wonderful things that are going on. What we're going to do tonight is have a panel with these four wonderful folks here. I'll introduce in a minute. And they will offer, a snapshot, a snippet, about 5 minutes, answering the leading question, and then you, friends, will get to pose questions. We have some index cards. If you raise your hand and you want an index card, Nan, raise your hand, Nan. Nan will bring you an index card and a pencil if you need it, and then we'll collect those and assemble them. She'll bring them back up to me. We will be taking questions that way rather than raising your hand and asking a question directly. We're going to be here for an hour doing this, and then we'll have another half hour or so of mixing, mingling, and more conversation. How does that sound? Yeah? Good. Great. Make sure that you check out the wonderful historical displays we have out there. You're going to hear more about those in a moment from Gary. I'm going to invite Gary to come on up and tell you a little something more about those. Great. Gary Carnes.
All right, thank you, Karen. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. The theme tonight was how can we learn from the past, from our experience, and use it today in resisting the Trump agenda. Basically, I want you to take a look at the exhibits before you go. I think they're important to, and I can, when after the panel discussion, we can spend some time talking about them. There's some very unique posters that tell the history of Monterey County and the various movements for social change in the United States in the last 50 or so years, many of which happened here in Monterey County. And to that point, I do want to thank some people who helped. Juan and Karen and I put together part of the collection. This is 10% of what we have, and the more we talk to people, the more they give us things. And I enjoy talking about these things, and I enjoy learning about them, and I think they're valuable for us to know moving forward as we build and we mobilize and organize to resist the Trump agenda. One quick thing I do want to say, despite the Trump agenda, I want to give a shout out for Senator Monning and the whole government of the state of California. I think we got a government we want in the state of California. I don't think in my whole life I've had a government that I really appreciated and agreed with. This is it, okay? But I do want to thank a few people really quickly that helped us put together the exhibits, and also Robin Guthrie is here. She's the archivist at CSUMB. We've talked to her about possibly turning all of these materials over to the university. But I do want to thank I want to thank a few people who have been really helpful in helping put on this event and in putting the exhibits together. And first of all is Heidi Feldman, my partner. Heidi reads everything before I tweet out at 3 a.m., so everyone should do that. Also like to thank Karen and Juan, who mean a lot to me. I don't know, we've done so much together. And some of the people that have donated materials to our history, of our own history, are Roberto Acuna, Glenn Church, Corey Miller, Rosemary Manson, and Nancy McClintock. And just yesterday, we found more things in Nancy McClintock's garage. And I love that woman. She kept everything, and I want to tell you about it. So after the panel, come over here and let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. One of the ways we make our community better is by taking that risk and stepping up in public service. We have some folks with us here tonight who have done that. If I miss someone, help me out. But I would like to give a shout out and ask to stand, please. Council member from Monterey, Alan Hoffa. Council member from Seaside, Kayla Jones. First one in 20 years, thank you very much. Yeah. Council member Jason Campbell. And of course we have Senator Bill Monning, who will be part of our panel. Have I missed anyone else who has stepped up to serve in elected office? Okay, great. Okay, so, well, let me know if you want to be recognized. There we go. So right now I'm going to I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful panel. I'm just going to say a couple of things, literally just a sentence or two, because we could spend a whole evening or write a whole book on any one of these individuals. And again, each will be starting with about 5 minutes about why they were motivated to give their life in service, which they all have in a variety of ways. And when you're done with your question, please raise your hand so Nan or Mibs could come get it from you. Thank you very much. And we have with us, I'll put it in order here, the order you're seating, Mr. Mel Mason, co-founder and executive director and clinical director of the Village Project Incorporated. You know the good work they're doing. He is perhaps better known in many local communities than a long-time nationally and internationally recognized human and civil rights activist who's helped lead many movements for social justice. Professionally, Mel is an acknowledged psychotherapist who places cultural competence at the center of the work of psychotherapists today. Founded in 2008 by Mel and the wonderful Regina Mason, his wife, and experiences as a member of the Black Panther Party in the late 60s and early 70s are the primary reason he's chosen a career as a counselor and therapist. Mr. Mel Mason. Also we have Jerry Cohen. And for 14 years, specifically from 1967 to 81, Jerry was with the United Farm Workers General Council. The UFW's General Council battled judges to get farm workers out of jail, negotiated hard-fought contracts with resistant growers from Delano to Salinas, and was instrumental in winning a landmark labor law that gives farm workers the right to choose their union. That was Jerry's crowning achievement. He was negotiating what he calls the best labor law in America. And then he courted then candidate for governor, Jerry Brown, and got him to publicly endorse a bill giving farm workers the right to a union election, the Agricultural Labor Relations Act. Brown signed it in 75. And we have Mary Hsia-Coron. After retiring in 2012, Mary has focused on grassroots environmental projects in the Monterey Bay region. In 2013, she helped start San Benito Rising, which passed Measure J in San Benito County, the first tracking ban by a citizens initiative in California. And then in 2015, Mary developed an environmental summer camp for underserved youth in San Juan Bautista. And most recently, 2016, Mary helped organize the Coalition to Protect Monterey County, which passed Measure Z. Yeah! And now Mary works successfully to lobby 17 jurisdictions to join Monterey Bay Community Power, a nonprofit energy provider that will double the usage of renewable energy in 3 counties. Previously, Mary worked at Hewlett-Packard for 28 years. Mary. And we have Senator Bill Monning. Senator William W. Monning was elected November 2012 and re-elected to represent the Senate District 17, is currently the Senate Majority Leader, and he serves on budget, health, judiciary, legislative ethics, natural resources and water, and health and human services. And he's been a leading advocate for reducing childhood obesity and other preventable chronic illnesses, and he was co-author of the End of Life Option Act. Thank you so much for that. He served as a senior civil rights specialist and was executive director and organizer of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, and he has a long history, which you'll be hearing more about tonight, with the United Farm Workers and their struggle for justice and equity, which their struggle informs all of our struggles. It is at the heart of dignity for all people. Thank you for all the work you do and the heart with which you do it. So, panelists, if you are, we'll start with Mel and go on down here. Tell us a bit about your life and the struggle and why you chose to do what you did and what relevance you think that has for us today.
Okay, is this on?
Oh, sorry. I apologize. There we go.
This is on.
No.
Good afternoon. My name is Mel Mason. And I grew up in Seaside. I was born in a coal mining town called Providence, Kentucky. That was at the height of Jim Crow segregation. My dad fought in World War II, lost all of his friends in one fell swoop, ended up with what we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder. Was real difficult to live with. which I came to understand later why. And so my mom my mom divorced him. And because my aunt, who had also remarried, was out here in Fort Ord, and they had never been apart from each other, so she kept begging my mom to move out here to California. So we moved out here in 1956. I was 13 years old. My life out here started pretty much, I was a basketball player. Actually, I was pretty good. I can say that now. I'm old. I'm almost 75 years old. I can brag on myself. Yeah, but I was bad. And a testament to that was in 2011, I was inducted into the California Community College Athletic Association Hall of Fame. And awesome. At that time,
Can you guard the line?
I can't now. I like to think I could then. My goal in life at that time was to go into the NBA, and I was one of the 5 top community college transfers going to 4-year schools. I had 104 scholarship offers when I left Monterey Peninsula College. My records are still there. It's been like 50 some odd years, and nobody's broken them. And I wish there was somebody who would, so people stop talking about it. And that was before the thank you. But I say all of that to say that was my focus. And what happened to me and what changed my course and trajectory in life was I finally accepted a scholarship. It was at Oregon State University. The racism there was so rife that I ended up not wanting to, but ended up kind of single-handedly trying to take on this formidable institution called the athletic department. There were other blacks on campus who were athletes, and they told me that I was crazy, that I was going to mess up my career, and they weren't going to mess up theirs, and so they weren't going to be with me. So it ended up being a pretty lonely struggle. I lost my scholarship, and so that was the end of my basketball career. And in fact, the National Collegiate Athletic Association had ruled that because of the manner in which I had behaved myself, that I was no longer able to play for any other university or college in the United States. So my mom used to tell me, God has something else for you to do. At that time, I didn't want to hear anything about God or anything else to do. But in many ways, I think she was right. What happened, down the road was I worked at a place called Western Electric. They had no union. Out of 1,500 workers, there were 50 of us who were black. We had people who had not been given pay raises in 7 years. We had black people who were being asked to train white people to be their supervisors. We organized something called the Black Workers Unity Organization. It was the first time I'd ever organized anything. And I wasn't used to speaking about anything other than calling out plays to my teammates. I was elected to be chair of this organization. Make a long story short, we won almost every demand that we put forward to end racism in that plant. And that's when somebody from the Black Panther Party came to visit me and said that Chairman Bobby Seale had wanted to talk to me. And so at that point, things just rolled forward. It didn't take away from being in the Black Panther Party was coalition building. And it's something that I've been a part of all of my life since then. I think you all know what happened to the Black Panther Party. A lot of things happened to a lot of us individually. I had my own run-ins with the FBI. But in the course of all of that, I also became an elected official here in Seaside, much to the chagrin and anger of racists. On the night that we were sworn in, I sat down in my seat and everybody started to clear out because they said that there was a bomb threat. And they didn't care how many white people they killed. The bomber, quote unquote, said, as long as we get that communist nigger. And so I stayed around. I didn't think it was a real bomb, so I stayed around and I read my city council packet. struggles against police brutality, which I was part of for a very long time, and kind of marked a lot of my history as an activist in this area. But along the way, I ran into people like Jerry Cohen and Bill Monning and Juan Martinez and Gary Carnes and Karen. We all worked together in a lot of different organizations, but we always came together in a coalition, and I felt that the one thing that I learned in the Black Panther Party that was incredibly helpful for me in the rest of my life was building coalitions as a way of getting things done, as a way of bringing about social change. And so that's kind of my presentation. I could go on forever.
Oh,
but
thank you.
Thank
you so much. Please raise your hand if you've completed your question card, and they'll come get it. Thank you very much. Jerry, that's good to go now.
All right. Is this thing on? Can you hear me?
What?
Yeah.
And we are recording tonight. Thank you for using the microphone. We
All right.
appreciate it.
I have to start with something that's like a softball thrown right down the middle of the plate. It's just too easy to not talk about. It's a fake news story that appeared in the newspaper record, the New York Times, on January 1st, 1996. And I found out about it from my good friend Jessica Gouveia, who was one of the real heroines of the farm worker movement. She called laughing and she said the headline on the obituary page says, Jerry Cohen, labor lawyer, is dead. He's dead.
Wow.
So I was first struck by how much joy my death would bring my good friends. Secondly, I said, you know, something is wrong. And found out there was an antitrust lawyer named Jerry Cohen in D.C. who had died. Bill Carter and I had filed an antitrust suit against the corrupt Teamsters Union because they had come in and stolen our contracts in '73. And the guy that was doing the rewrite confused my antitrust stuff with this dead guy's. And then he incorporated all this farm worker stuff, had nothing to do with his life. So I called the Sunday desk editor and I said, you know, you made a mistake here. And there was a pause and she said, are you sure? And I said, well, I'm talking to you. I said, you need to print a correction because the family is going to see stuff that relates to their dead father and husband. Shouldn't be in there. Well, we don't do that. We'll just print a one-line sentence. And so I thought, I don't want to intrude on the family because they're grieving. So I called his law firm and talked to his partner. And I said, I know you're grieving. And before I could finish, he said, oh yeah, I'm really aggrieved. All right, I've done my duty. I've done my duty. Now, I think the reason I got involved, you know, when you're a teenager, certain experiences really strike you. My dad was a doctor in the Navy. We moved around a lot. And maybe it's because when you move, you get along with everybody because you're not there for that long. You don't care what religion they are, you don't care what color they are. And then we moved to Washington, D.C. And I had a friend named Murray Dixon, and we ran the quarter mile. He was at a school called Phelps. I was at a school called Woodrow Wilson. We finished pretty close to each other, and we were exhausted. We put our arms around each other, walked back, took off our track shoes. After that was done, the football coach came up to me and said, Cohen, never put your arms around a nigger on the grounds of Woodrow Wilson High School. And I thought, oh man, you know, if I ever get a chance to do something about this, by God, I will. And then I went to a small college in New England, Amherst, and they had a fraternity system, and we did our best to destroy that system because certain fraternities wouldn't take black kids, certain fraternities wouldn't take Jews. And I found out in the course of that fight that the people that get involved in fights really enjoy them, and it's really fun to fight. And so I decided I'm going to go to law school.
Me girl,
I was dumb enough to think that you went to law school because people there were interested in justice, and I found out there were a few of us that were, but most of them were interested in money. Now, when we get to the farm workers, I want to give one example of just how much fun it can be. And that involves my good friend Bill. There have been books written about the farm workers. Miriam Powell wrote a really good book. Frank Bartley wrote a great book. But poor young William here doesn't even get an honorable mention in the book. But the reason I'm raising this is because after the Teamsters stole the contracts, I started filing lawsuits against them. And the Teamsters had this gaggle of well-attired attorneys from DC who had a great idea with the help of a local teamster, not a local teamster attorney, but an attorney in San Francisco named Avery Brundage. No, Bill Brundage. Avery Brundage is the racist that ran the Olympics.
Right.
Bill Brundage is a teamster lawyer. Well, Bill Brundage found a judge named Matheny in Riverside County who used to play football for Nebraska, and the joke was he obviously never wore a helmet. He got this guy to file an injunction. He got the guy to issue an order that Jerry Cohen cannot file lawsuits against the Teamsters. Well, what do you do when you're faced with an order like that? File another lawsuit. Got an ACLU guy who was a really good guy to defend me, and they wanted to throw me in jail for contempt. But there were some declarations, and we put a declaration on the top of the pile so these hot shit Eastern attorneys would see it first. And it was from a young law student named Bill Monning. Who had been in Avery, now Bill Brundage's class, and at lunchtime, Brundage had said, "You're not going to believe this, but we found a judge that was dumb enough to sign an order preventing him from filing lawsuits against the Teamsters." That was the first declaration we put on the pile. Those attorneys read it, turned bright red, and they knew it was over. And that's just another example of how much fun it was. And you're dealing with people that you can really enjoy working with. And I think, it's always kind of annoying to say, we did things a certain way, therefore you should. I don't think that's what tonight is really about. There's certain values and there's certain attitudes that I think we all learned in that struggle. One is you have to be persistent. You cannot give up. Fights take a long time. This fight for justice never ends, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And just to sort of illustrate this and wrap up my 5 minutes, it may seem a strange place to start, but in the 1920s in South Africa, labor laws were passed protecting workers, except the South African legislative body was honest enough to disclose their intentions. Protected workers, but in the law itself it said, except black workers. All right. So you fast forward to the New Deal, when the National Labor Relations Act was passed, and the Wagner Act gave rights to all workers, supposedly, but guess what? There were two categories of workers excluded. Domestics, who were mostly black women, and farm workers. Black cotton pickers, Filipinos, Mexicans, Chicanos. It accomplished the same thing, but Congress was clever enough to do it that way. Well, it took years and years of struggle, and the persistence of thousands of people who went to jail, striking and boycotting Caesar's leadership. Caesar's fast for nonviolence put us on the map. And finally, when Jerry Brown became governor, we got a law. And we're not going to have that long a fight this time, because I think one of the things we can be thankful for is, sometimes when your friends make mistakes, you're sort of constrained. We know, for example, that Obama deported more people than Bush. But we knew Obama was good on a lot of issues. So thank God for the Dreamers, because they took him on. Well, there's no ambiguity about what's going on now. We're totally unfettered. What we really need to do is figure out how to focus. And that's when there's so many horrible things going on across the board, that's a hard thing to figure out. And I'm not sure I have the answers to that, but that's what I think we need to focus on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm really honored to be with these distinguished folks here. I was asked actually after Dr. Laura Solorio turned this down. So I want to mention that the Measure Z and Measure J campaign was really a very large effort by many, many people. So it's not just one or two people. My background, I think you want me to get into that first before we talk about what I learned from our campaigns. As Karen has mentioned, I worked at Hewlett-Packard for 28 years, and I had gone to school at UC Santa Cruz and done some activism, worked on campaigns like John Blair's campaign, rent control campaign, trying to remember, Barry Commoner's presidential campaign, Jesse Jackson's campaign for president. So, it was a period of activism when I was in college, and then raised children, worked at Hewlett-Packard, and I retired early because I was very concerned about climate change. And my husband and I started thinking about this, and we had this opportunity. It just happened. I live in Aromas, which is really it's actually half Monterey County, half San Benito. And I happen to live on the border on the San Benito side. So we got involved, some of the people in the audience here actually got involved sooner in this effort to restrain the fracking effort in 2012, 2011, maybe it started earlier. There were people exploring for gas, oil in the Aromas area. So we decided to form a study group just to see what was, to learn as much as we can, watch Gasland. We actually went to watch a Josh Fox film, Gasland 2, and spoke to him. So anyway, and it started out with a study group of people who were interested in this topic, and it was a pretty amazing study group. It was actually Natasha's book club, and they turned out to be great activists. We try to have a very inclusive group. We, after a lot of discussion and exploration, decided to do an initiative because we decided that was probably the most effective way. We studied what happened in New York State, what happened in Colorado. So to make a long story short, we were able to win. I should remind people that San Benito County is about less than 1/7 the size of this county, Monterey. It's about 55,000 people or so. It was not that difficult, I would say, although some people thought we were pretty crazy to do an initiative. And we also decided that we were not, we're just going to do all volunteer effort. I think in a lot of ways that our naivete helped us because later on when we did have to hire during the election a professional campaign consultant, I think he was very skeptical that he did admit that he didn't think we were going to win afterwards. In any case, then I was, a number of us who worked on Measure J were asked to advise on Measure Z. It wasn't my Measure Z yet. There's an effort in Monterey, so we got more and more involved, and so a lot of you here are from the Measure Z campaign. I can see a few of you have worked on Measure J as well. So I think, what I learned is that you don't really need professionals. In fact, there's some advantages of having people who are just regular folks because you see things in a different way. Our professional campaign consultants really had a perspective which I think really don't touch people as directly. In our grassroots campaign, we had people, although we did have some professionals, Bill did a commercial for us, but it was very, we just wrote it with him. And it wasn't done by any campaign consultant. We had Dolores Huerta, we had Dr. Laura Solorio, we had 2 teachers and a fireman, and who else? There was another teacher from Soledad, Salinas Valley Prison, who decided to do her own commercial. And so we ended up with radio ads, TV ads, kind of at the last minute when one of our volunteers said, you have to do something. And so what we've learned is that, Unity Campaign is very inclusive, that really is very democratic. In fact, our consultants were always concerned about the fact that we try to be as inclusive as possible, and they always try to, during the campaign, limit it to a smaller group. But we really found that having a lot of perspectives is extremely important. Someone mentioned coalition, and we also found that the coalition concept is extremely powerful. We really didn't deliberately do this, but we ended up forming these coalitions, especially with Measure Z, because it's a huge population here. And so we collaborate with various campaigns in different cities, and the Democratic Party with unions, etc. Let's see, what was the other thing that someone mentioned? Having a lot of fun and doing things that are very enjoyable. I think that, really our closest friends now after a few years of activism are really people who worked on the campaigns. And, one person in our campaign said the most important thing in a grassroots camp are actually 2 most important things. One is lots of signs, small signs to show grassroots support. And the other is food for your volunteers. So I think it's really important to enjoy yourself The thing that I think, we've been reflecting a lot on, we won, we had an opportunity, by the way, to Measure Z and Measure J just very recently in February, March, and some part of April to really help with a really amazing effort that is, how many of you have heard of community choice energy?
Yes.
Monterey
Yes.
Power. Okay, great. So I'm glad that maybe some of you helped. Because what happened in February time when we found out that it was losing, so the Romero Institute and some of our friends like Margaret Rebecki were saying, would you guys help us, the Measure Z, Measure J folks? So we did, and so we made a huge difference. 17 jurisdictions, some of them that were voting against CCE, Community Choice Energy, have now joined. So now what we're doing now is really thinking about how we can really leverage the activism, that we have in several counties now. Even Santa Cruz County folks helped us to really work on something, what we're calling Bright Future Central Coast. And the idea behind this is to really train activists in many, many cities, 3 counties, that's Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz. We've all banned fracking and limited oil drilling. We all are part of this joint power, community choice energy. We can really create a vision for a green future for this whole region. So anyway, I'll stop there, but that's what some of us are working on right now.
Well, good evening, and I want to also thank the organizers and Unitarian Church for opening this home, and my colleagues here on the panel. My roots started in Los Angeles. My mom had grown up in this area. She met my dad at Fort Ord before he shipped out as a combat engineer in World War II. When he survived that, they set up shop in Los Angeles, where I was born. And grew up in a white middle-class family. I wouldn't say we were wealthy, but we had our basic needs taken care of. My dad was a civil engineer, Caltech engineer, whose day job was working for the city of LA, Building and Safety Department, as head of that department. In an early lesson in ethics, every Christmas we get all these gifts brought to our front door from developers, mostly alcohol. I remember a set of golf clubs. My sister and I made a strong case to keep those. But he sent it all back, and my mom typed using carbon paper a thank you letter, but expressing why in his position he couldn't accept any gifts, but he paid to send them all back. And he'd say, there's not going to be much for Christmas presents this year because we had to spend a couple $100 sending all these gifts back. But it made an early impression about ethics. And also, his life was dedicated to service. And so I think that was just the environment we grew up in. He died on active duty when I was 15, and it transformed our family. And I remember at the funeral, a military officer handed the flag to my mom and said, "You're in charge now, sonny boy." So at 15, that was kind of a heavy burden. I went to Berkeley. I'd grown up as a surfer jock. I lived for sports. I wasn't very comfortable socially, but give me a football field, basketball court, baseball field, that's where I lived. But in the 60s, growing up in Southern California, the anti-war movement, and my introduction was really through the Cultural Revolution, through music. Came to the Monterey Pop Festival at age 16 with my cousin who lived up here. That was an eye-opener. And then I went to Berkeley in the heat of the anti-war movement and learned about a broader world than the one that I'd grown up in. Got involved with UFW support committees, Third World Student Strike, Black Panther support efforts, George Jackson Clinic in Oakland, and became immersed with a group of friends that shared a common commitment and really felt our lives would be spent working for social justice and world peace. Now, Dana, my wife, who I met working with UFW, she said, "Don't talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So I won't talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I went to law school at University of San Francisco, was then a volunteer with UFW. Had met Jerry in the summer of '73, the biggest strike in the history of California. Over 3,000 workers arrested, 2 workers killed. One of my first jobs was investigating the death of Naji Daifullah. We later learned that Colson, working with Nixon, ordered the Justice Department to squelch a civil rights investigation of that murder. We learned a lot after Watergate and after Nixon was gone. But I had access to great teachers in elementary school on up through Berkeley. But without doubt, the most important training ground in my life was working with UFW, working with Jerry in the legal department, time with Caesar, with Dolores, and learning the art and science of organizing. And I just want to share a quote from a basketball coach, Luke Olson, famous coach, University of Arizona. He said, "Don't mistake activity for achievement." So when I look around at the reaction to Trump and the crisis that our nation and our planet faces, there's a lot of activity. But for that activity to be transformed to achievement, we need focus, what Jerry talked about, coalition building. Working in the legislature, we deal with multiple issues. Yesterday we passed single payer at about 6 p.m. Earlier that morning, I got a bill passed out of the Senate that's going after antitrust violations of the big health providers, the big networks like
Wonderful!
And I'm just most passionate right now with work we're doing for clean and safe drinking water for 300 communities in California that don't have clean, safe drinking water. Chular, rural areas, nitrate contamination, agricultural contamination. So we're working on a massive negotiation with agriculture, with stakeholders, environmental justice stakeholders, to create a sustainable water fund to remediate and provide safe drinking water to these 300 communities. But it's a fragile negotiation. But what I learned working with the union and Jerry, negotiation, it's all about power. And when you represent communities without power, traditional power, wealth, control of media, control of the courts, control of the newspapers, the TV, the power structure. So how did the UFW build contracts? How did they even get them to the negotiating table? What power did they exercise? Undocumented workers, not voters, subject to deportation, poor. What was the power? The guy with an 8th grade education, Cesar Chavez, learned how to focus moral power and built a movement through education of people throughout North America, Europe, Japan, South America, to focus a boycott that brought the growers to the table, because the moral power addressed their economic power. So as we move forward, I think the first question of any organizer should be, what's the goal? What's the objective? Are we going to work to flip a congressional seat in the Central Valley? Are we going to start working towards 2020 to get Trump out of there, hopefully before? They're not mutually exclusive, but if you're going to build an organizing campaign, what is the objective? And then in building organization, social media is a great tool, but I may be old-fashioned. One of the things I learned from the union is the power of house meetings, of building relationships with people who share a circumstance of disempowerment, and through organizing are going to gain power. And coalitions are critical. With Mel, we built coalitions. We had a 911 system, which was Mel's house. Whenever there was a Rodney King verdict or bombing of the assault in Panama, bombing in Iraq, we reached out, we pulled together LULAC, NAACP, National Lawyers Guild, ACLU, all the organizations that do their own organizing, have their own focus, but this is a crisis. Let's pull together. We go to the library in Salinas, we do a press release, and there'd be 15, 20 people in the front of the room representing all shades, shapes, and areas of Monterey County. and we'd speak with one voice, although each organization would have their statement. And we were focused. We knew why we gathered for that episodic pulling together. But to get Trump out of the White House, to flip these congressional seats, or to take power in local elections, is the focus electoral? That's actually one of the easier organizing feats because it lends itself to numbers. You know how many votes you need and where you're going to get them. But I'll stop there. We'll open it up. But coalition building, focus, having the cause that people care about, and you speak to what they care about, and then the art and science of building your movement with numbers, targets, and accountability.
Don't feel like all of you have to answer this, but all of you are welcome to answer if you would like. And again, we could have a whole hour on any one of these questions. So just a little bit about the first thing that comes to mind here. What do you have to say about stepping up and dealing with stopping the criminalization of the poor? Much of what's going on, and we're talking the working poor, homeless folks, elders, many children in poverty now. What do you have to say about the criminalization of being poor in the United States of America now?
I think one of the things that a number of us have learned is that, one of the mistakes that we sometimes have made is that we go out and we speak for somebody else. Okay, so I'm not homeless. I'm not saying that I can't work with and work around that issue, but for me, it's about finding a way to connect with those folks who are being victimized and doing whatever we can to assist them in empowering themselves. Because ultimately, the powerful voice is not going to be somebody speaking for somebody else. It's going to be those people speaking for themselves with us working in coalition with them.
Great.
So that's mine.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Great.
And we're not just talking about the poor, we're talking about undocumented people, and I think we need to put it in a proper historical context. It reminds me when the Fugitive Slave Act was passed in 1850, various states had personal liberty laws that would protect people. And there were slave hounds all over the damn country trying to grab people and to take them back into slavery. Now we have the appropriately named Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, who is now doing the same thing with undocumented people. And the sanctuary cities, to me, are analogous to those personal liberty laws that the northern states, especially New England, had. And this is a case where the parents, who might be undocumented, can't speak for themselves, but the children can. The children are legal, and I know some folks in various places that are focusing on the children, and the children are starting to raise hell about this. And it's just one more example of they are focused on an issue that the moral force behind their argument is overwhelming, and they're not going to stop. And so I think that it's not just poor that are being criminalized, it's people that came here to work. We had a lot of people, Bill will tell you this too, they were in the union, they came to work. And I know some people now, and it's hard, you have to tell them the truth. They may have to go out and find guardians for their kids, because they might be taken away. So they're in a hell of a spot, and it's a dilemma for all of us, but I'm really encouraged by young people that are fighting back.
Great, thank you very much.
I don't have any.
I have another question, if
Let me just
Bill wants to
quick
answer.
comment on that. I'm going to boast a little bit about what we're doing in the legislature right now on the criminalization of the poor, because when you look at our laws, they're stacked against poor people and people of color. So we've passed legislation this year, it's not law yet, it's moving to the assembly, sentencing laws. People with a drug conviction, simple possession, who've done their time and get arrested on another charge. If they have that prior conviction and they've done their time, a judge automatically has to add 2 or 3 years to the sentence on the new one. And it's not negotiable, it's not discretionary. So we're removing that because it puts are the ones who are the ones that get picked up on the streets. We also just passed a bill yesterday brought by Senator Hertzberg, I'm a co-author, to eliminate bail as we know it. Bail is what puts people in jail before trial, before conviction, and they sit in there and they lose their job, they lose their earning capacity, and yet they don't meet the test of a flight risk or security risk. So what we're going to retool is to say, if you're not a flight risk and you're not a security risk, you should be released pending your trial. Now, who do you think's opposing this? The bail bondsmen from all over the state. And there's some guy, I don't watch TV, but there was a bounty hunter who has a dog, who's a famous dog. So he was walking around the Capitol the other day, urging people to vote against this bill because it was going to hurt his business. On the immigration front, one other comment. We have, since our leadership took over in the Senate, we have moved our budget ticker. For the first time in 20 years, we're putting more into higher education than into the prison industrial complex. I credit Jerry Cohen for realignment and for looking at, over a majority of people in our prisons have a mental health diagnosis and they've never received mental health treatment. So what Jerry Brown and we've done with realignment is say those folks should be getting treatment for alcohol addiction, drug addiction, mental health. That's where our dollars are better invested, is in treatment, not interminable incarceration. And just let me close on the immigration front, because we've passed laws. The sanctuary state one hasn't gotten to the governor yet. It's also in the assembly, but it basically says, it states what's the current law. Immigration laws are federal. They can be enforced by federal officers, but not by city police or sheriffs. And we carve out exceptions for gang task forces and drug task forces. But what Trump has signed eliminates due process for people. And Jerry talked about families getting a guardianship for their kid, but there's another collateral damage to this. It's called toxic stress. And teachers are seeing it in classrooms. Children who are fearful that their parents may be deported or they may be deported or they're going to get separated. And it's called toxic stress. And you have it in communities where there's a lot of violence and drive-by shootings. And so kids can't concentrate. And it makes them more susceptible to illness and disease, including mental illness. So what Trump has set in motion, we haven't begun to see the total public health consequence of it. But again, I think being aware and mindful and giving voice to teachers and families who are dealing with this every day is how we empower the state legislature and others to protect the backbone of our economy. My district, the three leading employers, agriculture, hospitality, tourism, and higher education. And the first two, it's immigrant workforce. They are the backbone of our economy. We should honor them and protect them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have 2 more questions here, and again, this can be a long list, but just the first thing that comes to mind, the first thing or two. If we had a new deal for the 21st century and could implement it successfully, what are 1 or 2 things that you would want to make sure were in that new deal for a 21st century?
That's a great question, and I do think we are in a period where we do need a new deal, and even more massive than the one that FDR engaged in, because we are confronting climate change. And as I was listening to our speakers talk about, the prison industrial complex, my husband's probably the best to talk about it, but I think, having been a teacher at Soledad for 20 years, but I do think that we have to look at the way we're spending money. I applaud the fact that the legislature in this state is starting to cut back on the prison industrial complex, but it is massive. I mean, it is competing with our schools and a lot of other things like climate change. So if you are, my husband and I talk about the fact that for the state of California, the prison industrial complex is like the military budget at the federal level. It is a great waste of our public resources. It's a waste of a lot of human resources. And we can be redeploying that money. You know, there's a few things, it's not going to be a simple question, but I think that we really need to be pretty bold. I don't think incrementalism is going to be enough right now, given the major problems that we are confronting, not just climate, but a lot of other issues. We need to think very boldly. You know, can we do what some of the countries in Europe have done, really greatly reduce the number of people who are incarcerated, and then free that money to do things like create jobs? I would say that we could probably create a massive number of green jobs. You know, not just in shifting from renewable energy, from fossil fuel to renewables, but also doing things like creating greater energy efficiency. If we pass laws, and I think we are starting to do that, legislators have been doing that in California, but we could probably be even more ambitious and find more money to invest in energy efficiency. If all the homes and commercial buildings were made more energy efficient, there would be a huge number of jobs in construction, for example. And because we're wasting a lot of energy. It's not just a matter of shifting to renewables. We need to look at our agriculture, and frankly, you know, this is really difficult. Some of our people in our group have been working on pesticide reform. It's a very difficult problem. But really, you know, what climate scientists have told us is that to address climate change, it's not enough just to shift from fossil fuels to renewable. You really have to address big ag, because there's a huge amount of methane created. The fact that we are using the soil in a way where we do not sequester as much carbon as we could. There are techniques that would be much better. I think, you know, we have to look, I'll stop there. There's a lot of things that we need to really examine at a very fundamental level, and we have to be ready to make big changes.
Great. What would you like to say?
You know, one thing I think we should think about before we think about specific changes, which are crucial, is we have to look at our country's original sin, which is still plaguing us. Right. And we have to enfranchise those people who've been disenfranchised. And the example I'll give you, you know, during Reconstruction, there was guys in white robes that ran around trying to kill people that were trying to vote in the South. Now we do it a little more in a more sophisticated way. We have these jerks in their black robes sitting up there cutting the Voting Rights Act, which they have no business doing. So we have to start speaking out. And one thing I really like, and it gets back to Mel's interest in basketball, you know, when Michael Jordan was asked to endorse the guy who ran against that racist segregationist Jesse Helms, Michael Jordan, who was a great basketball player but didn't have much of a moral backbone, said, "Even Republicans buy Nikes." Now you'll notice that even though we're rooting against LeBron James right now, when Trayvon Martin was murdered, they all wore hoodies. When Garner was smothered to death by cops in New York, he wore a t-shirt, "I can't breathe." Well, he's getting the vengeance of the racists now when they're attacking him, but a lot of people in a lot of vocations who have voice are starting to speak out, and I know from people I know, they are impressed by this, and I think we're going to have to do whatever we can to enfranchise the people who really should be voting in this country, and then we'll be able to address climate change and everything else. But race is still at the heart of this, from my point of view.
Yeah, I would just say the New Deal would be a carbon-free New Deal. We just passed this week a 100% renewable energy goal by 2040, and we moved up the 50% target to 2020 from 2030. Governor Brown right now is in China, working with China. We're also going to build an alliance of states committed to the Paris Treaty on Climate. I recommend a Bill McKibben op-ed in today's New York Times. We're at a tipping point, and what Trump is doing is an assault on not just our nation, but on the planet and future generations. So a carbon-free commitment, and that does lead to infrastructure investment. We've created 500,000 renewable energy jobs in California. We've created more jobs in renewable energy than all of the coal-related jobs in the country right now. And my final pillar, and there's certainly room for a lot more, would be public health promotion and building a healthcare system based on the promotion of health and wellness, not the treatment of illness and disease.
Excellent, thank you so much. Stand, if there are people that need to leave at 7, please take care of yourselves. We're going to go another 5 minutes here answering the final question, and then just a little wrap up and thank you to the volunteers. So the battles are many and the road is long. And they keep coming. You know, we look one direction and we see that we're stepping out of these agreements regarding, with the rest of the world, all the 2 nations, regarding the Paris agreements. And at the same time, it's being declared an emergency that women cannot get contraception, and it's being snuck in without any public discussion or debate because of the person occupying the White House now declaring it an emergency. What's this emergency about women's contraception? This just happened. And sneak that in there so there's no public discourse about it while we're all scuttling over here with fire after fire after fire. It's going to be a long few years. In the times when you have struggled most, what have you found? What would you like to say to folks as we realize that whatever I've been doing, I got to do more. I have to lead. I have to be more agile about being a leader, a follower, or whatever I have to do. I have to do more of it. What did you find in yourself at those darkest times? And I'm not asking you to share anything that's too personal, but what you're willing to share that you observed or experienced when you thought, dear Lord, how am I going to do this?
Well, I'll lead off and we'll send it around this way. It's been alluded to, these movements, coalitions, organizations, they can be a place for friendships and building unity and sustenance, but they can also be wrought with conflict, personality disorders. You have to keep in mind the larger calling. It's not about any one person's personality or individuality. It's for the common good. But as Jerry said, some of these struggles take forever. Some of these we may not see the dream we have in our lifetime. But in the path of building friendships, the UFW, in addition to everything it achieved, a lot of relationships came out of that. A lot of cross-cultural relationships, people with very diverse backgrounds who met in the union. And I think to Karen's question on point, the deepest, darkest, the failures, the hitting a brick wall, the frustration, you got to take care of yourself. No cause is so important that you should run yourself into the ground, because then you're no use to the cause. So you got to take care of yourself, and whatever that means, you got to protect the time. We have a friend who worked in our coalitions, Bill Melendez, and we'd be at these meetings of the Civil Rights Coalition, and we'd be looking for the next meeting, and Bill would have his calendar there, and he'd say, "Oh, I have a therapy appointment that morning." And we thought, boy, he's being pretty candid about it. Well, his therapy was riding his bicycle, but he blocked it out. He blocked it out on his calendar, and he just wrote therapy. And so he'd go to meetings, and he said, "Well, I can't, I have my therapy session." So whatever your therapy session is, put it in your calendar.
Well, that's a challenging question. I think that I think having a vision is also something that I think has helped us. You know, for a lot of people, I think we were accused by some people when we started Measure J and Measure Z of being too narrowly focused, and I think people didn't realize that we actually, some of us had a more of a vision, and I think we're at a point where we have to discuss what that vision might be, and you know, discuss it in together. The other thing that we I think learned is that Measure J and Measure Z activated a lot of people, a lot of activists who now have the skills to organize, and we also learned it in our fight, you know, for community choice energy, that a lot of the city councilors are not as progressive as we thought, and also the supervisors. So we decided, some of us, that we need to kind of activate the activists in various cities to really work on getting better city council members, better school boards even, you know, just really shake things up and make it better, because what we thought, you know, Measure Z and Measure J was kind of like a flashlight, and so was Community Choice Energy. It was like a flashlight shining in the nooks and crannies of our body politic, and we found a lot of corruption. You know, the mayors who came out against Measure Z and did that commercial, and anyway, and also who were against Community Choice Energy for various reasons. So we really felt, and that's what we're thinking of doing now, is to form a group that will work on educating people in various communities. And there's actually a lot of interest, like Margaret Rebecca is working on changing the city council in King City right now. And because what happens is when you discover this, if the city council is not responding to what people want, you just basically, you know, even if you don't win that, you have to change that city council. So
Thank you.
Fact.
As to the past, when things got tough, we always had a sense of community and each other. So if Juan de la Cruz is shot through the heart or Najee's beaten to death, and Bill comes back with his report, it helped forge really strong ties with those of us that were working together to fight back and make sure we could get what justice we could. As to what's going on now, I've had the opportunity to speak to young people quite often, and my grandkids, they're way ahead of the curve. They know what's going on with our oceans. They know what the threat to climate change is. The question of somebody being gay, that's about as interesting to them as if somebody's left-handed or right-handed. It's irrelevant. And that should give us a lot of hope, and we should focus on those young people.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and this is probably going to somewhat echo what Bill and what Bill, Mary, and Jerry just said. But in our experience, and I'm glad that you brought up Bill Melendez, because as a therapist, I thought, wow, this is really great for Bill to be able to disclose that and not have stigma and all of that. And I found out he was riding his bicycle, which, you know, that was pretty cool as well. But I think the thing that we learned, and we had a number of coalitions that we worked in together. Certainly the Civil Rights Coalition, and we had some real battles against the DA and the jail. We actually changed how the jail was operating. We created a civil rights hotline so that inmates could call the Equal Opportunity Office or call, you know, any of our civil rights organizations and not have some deputy, you know, in between them. I think we're going to fight to get that back. But we also had some other battles that we didn't win, and I think we got somewhat on a roll. And then when you have one that you don't necessarily win, like, you know, one or two of the killings over in Salinas, it was real easy to all of a sudden get down. It was also real easy for some of us. I'll just talk about myself and my bad temper. You know, that where you almost want to go out and do something solitary. And you have to remember that whatever you do, you know, is going to reflect on the whole coalition. They won't just say, well, you know, Mel Mason went out here and acted a fool. It is the Civil Rights Coalition, you know, and as one of its representatives of this, but it'll always be the organization. So you keep the organization in mind. It's that organic body that you are part of, and whether you have a leadership position in it or not, everybody has the same investment in the organization and the work. And it's also a place of solace. You know, the friendships that you talk about that come out of it start from the fact that when you come together, even if it's to come together to talk about, we just got our butts whipped, that everybody can say, yeah, we got our butts whipped. And we are going to get back together and kick somebody else's butt. You know, it's always about, that's the beauty of the coalitions, and also coalitions, you know, give you a lot of different perspectives, so that when and it's the coalition that decides what the focus is going to be. You know, and so staying with the coalition is absolutely critical, and it's really critical when you start having things not go quite your way. You know, that you recognize, one, that you didn't go out here and screw up on purpose. That you were working your butt off, and it just didn't quite work. And what you do is you go back and say, what can we learn from that? And we learn from that collectively. So that way, when we come out of a defeat, if you want to call it a defeat, you know, then we come out even stronger than we were at the time that this so-called defeat happened. I place so much value on coalitions for all of those different reasons. And Jerry, you're right. Years ago, I would go to different places, whether it was South Central, whether it was Hunters Point, whether it was, and I found all of these young people, young black, brown, and white people that were progressive, and they were finding their own way. And in some cases, they were better off without us old timers telling them what to do. Because they were beginning to figure it out, and I think that is kind of the thing that's heartening for me, is that, yeah, we can all share our experiences. And thank goodness that we came before you. You know, that we're slowly but surely becoming ancestors. Which is scary to think about.
Thank you.
But you have that foundation to work from. You know, and these young people today are fearless, and they won't take no for an answer. And I'm just so happy that they're here. And when I see things like Black Lives Matter, you know, when I see you know, young people, you know, in coalition standing up against, you know, attacks on immigrant workers. When I see all, and it's young people, you know, it's almost like you're rolling back in time. You know, we used to be in school, you know, raising hell. Now we see that young people, whether they're in school or not, are out here raising hell. They are a force to be reckoned with. You know, and the best thing that we can do is stay out of their way. and maybe we can make, and I think hopefully we have some wisdom that we learned from all these years. Yeah. But this struggle goes on. And whether it's Trump or anybody else that's in office, you know, it's ultimately the people in the street that's going to determine what kind of social change happens, if it happens at all. It's not going to be, Trump's not going to be able to stop the masses of people in this country. That's certainly not going to be able to stop the masses of leadership that's coming from our young folks in this country. So all of that is really, really hopeful for us, and I see a great future, a bright future ahead for this society, regardless of whether Trump or any damn thing else is sitting up there in the White House, and maybe he won't even be there that much longer anyway.
Volunteers, Lauren, Judy, Heidi, Miss, Gary, Patricia, Stephanie, Nan, Wes, Bob taking pictures, Susan's taking pictures. Thank you so much for helping out. If anyone wants to hang out and there'll be conversation, I invite you to enjoy the displays there and have conversation. We're going to be cleaning up the chairs in here. There's more beverages to enjoy, more food to enjoy. We don't have to be out of here anytime soon. We can hang out if we want to. Thank you so much for supporting to keep the Center for Change. The Center for Change is at 1238 Fremont in Seaside. It is available for your group to be there. We have had the Women's March, the March for Science, Peninsula Pride, Sister Giant, the Democrats, all kinds of clubs and groups. Use the Center for Change, and thank you so much for your donations tonight. Online, we have a GoFundMe. Check us out on Facebook. Thanks for your generosity. Good night.